So let's finally talk about orange wines. Orange wines are also known as white macerated wines that were coming from fermented grapes and skins and seeds in a more or less similar way to red wines. But here the time on the skins is often elongated to sometimes several months up to more than a year. Due to that, this process gives the wines a distinctive orange color, more tannins, more complex flavors and aromas than we know from ordinary or from other commercial white wines. Orange wines are often bit confused or mixed with the concept of low intervention, but it's worth differentiating here. Um, some key elements to consider when performing a sensory analysis of orange wines are, first of all, the point appearance. So the color of orange wines can range from a pale orange to a deep amber color, but depending on the age, the degree of oxygen, and the amount of phenols that are involved here. The color intensity and any variation in hue should be considered. So there shouldn't be any knockout criteria. The aroma can be quite complex with a range of several fruit aromas, floral aromas, but also herbal notes, but as well as aromas like tea, spices, earthy undertones. Any oxidative notes such as sherry or nutty aromas, which may be an kind of international aspect of the wine. All of that should be considered. So let's move on. So in terms of taste, we evaluate here the level of acidity, the sweetness. Usually they are completely dry. And tannins in the wine, the tannins here are higher than we know from normal white wines. We note any acidity or bitterness, which can be a characteristic or a typical point of those macerated wines. Take note of any fruity and floral flavors, such as typical aromas, but maybe also some aromas which you wouldn't directly connect to the variety, and as well as any savory or herbal notes. And quite important here also to evaluate the balance of the flavors and the level of their intensity. And for me personally, it's quite interesting to discover when those orange wines seem to have a higher acidity. It can help to balance a bit better the pronounced tannins in that. In terms of mouthfeel, it's the level of acidity, sweetness, and phenolic levels here that should be evaluated. Also take into account the astringency or bitterness, considering fruity floral notes as well as up to salty and herbal notes. And here once more we should see a certain balance here. Quite characteristic for orange wines are that they are rich in so-called flavonoids from the skins and from the seeds, and include compounds such as quercetin, for example, and these compounds can furthermore contribute to that floral, herbal, but also fruity notes of those wines. The finish is also a quite important point while judging orange wines. Here you should pay attention to the duration of the finish and any lingering aftertaste. So the tannins play here a major role. And please take account any changes in flavors and aromas as the wine persists. So orange wines have an important phenolic structure due to that prolonged contact to the skin and the scenes, sometimes even also with the stems. More than 80% of the orange wines in Georgia are said to be just fermented on the skins, meaning that prior to that you did a destemming. but some are still like this, the older way of doing orange wines still on the stems. So they also bring in here a point. A trained taster with a strong knowledge of wine chemistry can also help to identify and evaluate the phenolic compounds of orange wines through sensory analysis. So what does it mean? How astringent, how bitter it is, and what specific further characteristics do we get in here? And finally, the tasting conditions. So for orange wine, same story like for the previous wine styles. Standardized conditions, lighter orange wines should be tasted at a temperature range from 10 to 12%, and more concentrated, complexer orange wines should also be tasted at a bit higher temperatures between 12 and 14 degrees Celsius in a standardized glass with a fill height of 35 milliliter of wine in that case. Okay, I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.